Okay, okay, look. Do you see this? This detect. Okay, look. Okay, look. Okay, look.
morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning. Good morning. Yes. Good morning, everybody. My name is Stefan Balzer. I'm the host for this morning session. I'm very happy to be here to present to you the session called The Next Big Thing. We have a group of entrepreneurs and investors from Israel and the region of Berlin-Brandenburg, and we will discuss the topic of most dynamic markets for entrepreneurship, innovation, and venture capital. But to start, I would like to invite the Minister of Economics and European Affairs in Brandenburg, Ralf Christophers, to come to the stage to give his address. Herzlich willkommen.
Eure Exzellenz, Herr Botschafter, meine Damen und Herren, Ladies and Gentlemen, ich freue mich sehr, heute auf dieser Veranstaltung zu Ihnen sprechen zu können. Und da wir über digitale Werte reden, gestatten Sie mir, den Anlass digitale Werte für ein anderes Wertbekenntnis zu nutzen. Es gab vor wenigen Tagen einen Zwischenfall in Berlin. Und ich will an dieser Stelle so sagen, in Deutschland ist kein Platz für Antisemitismus. Und ich bin sehr froh, dass wir auf einer Veranstaltung über digitale Werte, Brandenburg, Deutschland trifft Israel, dass wir auch über diesen Bereich sprechen können. Herr Botschafter, nochmal herzlich willkommen. Meine Damen und Herren, ich war vor 1,5 Jahren zusammen mit dem Ministerpräsidenten Herrn Platzek und einer 35-köpfigen Wirtschaftsdelegation in Israel. Und dieser Besuch hat mich sehr beeindruckt. Er hat mich beeindruckt, weil ich dort auch eine Start-up-Kultur kennengelernt habe, von der ich ausgehe, dass sowohl Brandenburg als auch Israel in dieser Frage sehr, sehr viele Gemeinsamkeiten haben. Und ich hoffe, dass die heutige Veranstaltung einen Beitrag dazu leisten wird, dass Brandenburger und israelische Unternehmen in diesem Bereich der Kreativwirtschaft stärker und weiter sich miteinander vernetzen und ausbauen. Meine Damen und Herren, die sehr große Bereitschaft, in Israel Risikokapital für neue, innovative Entwicklungen bereitzustellen, ist nach meiner Meinung etwas Besonderes. Es gelingt ihnen sehr gut, die Bereitstellung von Risikokapital, Kooperation mit Universitäten und Immobilienentwicklungen miteinander zu verbinden. Auch die Region Berlin-Brandenburg musste sich nach dem Fall der Mauer neu definieren. Und von daher verstehen wir uns auch als eine Start-up-Region, und zwar nicht nur im Bereich Digitalisierung, sondern in allen Bereichen, aber eben auch als eine Start-up-Region. Insbesondere wegen der starken kulturellen Ausstrahlung Berlins ist die Hauptstadtregion in den letzten Jahrzehnten zum Anziehungspunkt für viele innovative Menschen aus Europa geworden. Von diesem internationalen Input profitieren heute zahlreiche erfolgreiche Unternehmen und wissenschaftliche Einrichtungen in der Hauptstadtregion. Berlin und die Hauptstadtregion Berlin-Brandenburg gilt mittlerweile als Internet-Hauptstadtregion Europas. Und wenn am vorletzten Wochenende auf dem ehemaligen Flughafen Tempelhof die sogenannte Campus-Party stattfand, an der 10.000 Menschen aus vielen Ländern Europas ihre Ideen zur Zukunft des Internet ausgetauscht haben, macht das diese Entwicklung nochmal deutlich. Meine Damen und Herren, die Hauptstadtregion Berlin-Brandenburg versteht sich ebenso wie Israel als Think-Tank-Region. Nirgendwo in Deutschland ist die Forschungsdichte so hoch wie hier. Wir haben 7 Universitäten, 21 Hoch- und Fachschulen und 250 außeruniversitäre Forschungseinrichtungen mit rund 50.000 Wissenschaftlern. Das bietet sehr, sehr gute Kooperationschancen. Mit 180.000 Studenten und jährlich rund 19.000 Absolventen bieten die Hochschulen Nachwuchskräften in nahezu allen Fachrichtungen. Der Anteil der internationalen Studenten ist überdurchschnittlich hoch. Mit 25% an der Brandenburgischen Technischen Universität in Cottbus und 40% an der Europa-Universität Viadrina in Frankfurt-Oder. Das Land Brandenburg, oder besser gesagt unsere Unternehmen, leisten einen wichtigen Beitrag dazu, dass die Hauptstadtregion bei den digitalen Medien so erfolgreich ist. Der Mitbegründer von SAP, Hasso Plattner, hat als Stifter in Potsdam das Hasso-Plattner-Institut gegründet, das zu einem weltweit führenden Institute der angewandten Informatik sich entwickelt hat. Als universitäres Exzellenzcenter für IT-System Engineering mit Standorten in Potsdam und Palo Alto betreibt es eine erstklassige Forschung. Im Umfeld dieses Instituts ist der Risikokapitalfonds Hasso-Plattner Ventures gegründet worden. An diesem Kapitalfonds ist auch die ILB, also die Landesbank Brandenburg, mit 10% beteiligt. Dieser Risikofonds hält schwerpunktmäßig Beteiligungen an Unternehmen in Berlin-Brandenburg, aber auch in Israel. In Israel sind es aktuell 5 Beteiligungen. CEO ist hier der israelische Staatsbürger Herr Davison, der vorher unter anderem bei israelischen Risikokapitalunternehmen gearbeitet hat. Und meine Damen und Herren, wir haben uns in Brandenburg entschieden, die Risikokapitalbereitstellung durch die öffentliche Hand weiter auszubauen. Hintergrund ist für uns, dass eine Reihe von Wirtschaftszweigen auch im Bereich der digitalen Welt nicht mehr nur Start-up-Unternehmen sind, sondern sich beginnen, in der Wertschöpfungskette als Unternehmen zu etablieren. Und damit steht die Frage Eigenkapitalausstattung nicht nur für den Technologietransfer, nicht nur für die Gründung, sondern auch für das Unternehmen, das sich am Markt platzieren muss. Und deswegen werden wir weitere Fondslösungen auflesen, die als Nachrangdarlehen die Eigenkapitalbasis hier stärken wird, weil wir der festen Überzeugung sind, dass der Osten Deutschland, die Hauptstadtregion, im Bereich der digitalen Welt, im Bereich der neuen Dienstleistungen, der neuen Wertschöpfungen eine industrie- und wertschöpfungspolitische Chance hat, die wir umfassend zu nutzen denken. Und Ziel ist und bleibt es, meine Damen und Herren, die Hauptstadtregion Berlin-Brandenburg als eine der Innovationsregionen hier in Europa zu etablieren. Ich glaube, dass wir dann im internationalen Wettbewerb uns gut bis sehr gut behaupten können. Und dabei sind uns Kooperationen und Zusammenarbeit wichtig. Und deswegen freue ich mich heute, dass wir mit Ihnen ins Gespräch kommen. Und ich möchte an uns alle appellieren. Lassen Sie uns solche Veranstaltungen nutzen, nicht nur zum Austausch, nicht nur zum Schaffen von Kooperationsbeziehungen, nicht nur dafür zu nutzen, dass man auch einen guten wirtschaftlichen Erfolg vorbereiten kann, sondern lassen Sie es auch nutzen, über diesen Weg kulturelle Beziehungen zwischen Deutschland und Israel weiter auszubauen. Ich bin der festen Überzeugung, dass das eine gute Grundlage ist, auch in der Perspektive gute Beziehungen miteinander auszugestalten. Vielen Dank. Ich habe die große Freude, Herr Exzellenz, Herr Botschafter, Sie zu bitten, an uns einige Worte zu richten. Vielen Dank.
Sehr geehrter Herr Minister Christophers, sehr geehrter Herr Gillinger, sehr geehrter Herr Liebe, sehr geehrte Kollegin Frau Sagi, meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, morgen, erstens. Der Staat Israel ist erst 64 Jahre alt und er gehört zu den kleinsten Staaten der Welt. Auch wenn wir ganz sicher nicht perfekt sind, so haben wir es doch geschafft, in einem Bereich führend zu sein. Nirgends auf der Welt werden so viele erfolgreiche Start-ups gegründet wie in Israel. Wir sind eine echte Start-up-Nation. In Israel gibt es rund 3.850 Start-up-Unternehmen. Das ist, gemessen an der Größe des Landes und seiner Bevölkerung, eine höhere Zahl als in den meisten anderen Ländern der Welt. Das ist natürlich kein Zufall. Wir setzen seit unserer Staatsgründung konsequent auf unser wichtiges Kapital, auf die Menschen und ihre Ideen. Von Beginn an war die israelische Gesellschaft von einem großen Pioniergeist geprägt. Die Menschen hatten immer Visionen und sie waren bereit, alles dafür zu tun, um ihre Träume Wirklichkeit werden zu lassen. Früher haben die israelischen Pioniere das Land fruchtbar gemacht. Heute helfen unsere Pioniere dabei, die technologische und die digitale Welt zu gestalten. Vergessen Sie bitte nicht, dass wir Israelis seit 64 Jahren in einer Realität leben, in der wir permanent um unsere Existenz kämpfen müssen. Doch wir haben uns entschieden, denn darüber nicht zu klagen oder vielleicht nur ganz selten zu klagen. Stattdessen nutzen wir aus, dass unsere Lebensrealität uns kreativ macht. Wir können Risiken gut einschätzen, wir sind Meister der Improvisation und wir sind gewohnt, blitzschnell zu handeln. All diese Faktoren wirken sich auf unsere Fähigkeit zur Innovation aus. Ein guter Indikator für die Erfindungsgeist und Unternehmertum ist die rasant wachsende Start-up-Szene in Israel. What it takes to be a Startup Hotspot, darum soll es auch gleich in der Diskussion gehen. Die Förderung von jungen Unternehmen hat eine lange Tradition in Israel. Sie kennen vielleicht den Namen Stef Wertheimer. Er wurde in Deutschland geboren und musste als 11-Jähriger mit seiner Familie von den Nazis fliehen. Heute ist Wertheimer ein erfolgreicher israelischer Unternehmer. Bekannt ist er vor allem als Gründer des Steffen Industrieparks in Nordisrael. Schon in den 80er Jahren begann er dort, junge Firmengründer zu unterstützen. Damals sprach man noch eher von Greenhouse-Projekts und die damaligen Greenhouse-Projekts sind die Startups der heutigen Zeit. Der Wertheimer schafft auch heute noch für junge Unternehmer die Rahmenbedingungen zur Entwicklung. Sein Modell ist extrem erfolgreich und er ist immer seinem Motto treu geblieben, das in seiner Firma an der Wand steht: Where innovation never stops. Wohin die israelische Innovationskraft führen kann, werden Sie in 2 Stunden bei der Keynote-Speech von Dov Moran erleben, dem israelischen Erfinder der USB-Sticks. Also, meine Damen und Herren, es freut mich sehr, dass hier beim Internationalen Medienkongress in Berlin Vertreter israelischer und deutscher Start-ups zusammenkommen. Berlin und Tel Aviv haben viel gemeinsam. Beide sind dynamische und lebendige Metropolen, in denen das Leben scheinbar niemals stillsteht. Und neben einer polarisierten Partyszene herrscht in beiden Städten auch eine kreative Start-up-Stimmung. Ich bedanke mich bei den Initiatoren von Medienwoche sehr herzlich für die großartige Idee, dieses deutsch-israelische Matchmaking zu organisieren. Machen wir uns gemeinsam auf die Suche nach dem Next Big Thing. Vielen Dank.
So, and I would like to welcome to the stage now our participants in the discussion. I think we have the names right here in front. Maybe you can all come to the stage. Konrad. So what we will do in the next 90 minutes is to try to get closer to the differences and the things that Israel and Germany, especially the region of Berlin and Tel Aviv, have in common. And we want to discuss frameworks, political frameworks, financing, the status of startups and venture capital. And I will shortly introduce our participants in the discussion. I start from your left side, and I welcome Nico Lumov. He is the COO of Digital Pioneers in Hamburg. You call yourself an accelerator, right? Is that correct? Next to him is Yair Rehm. He is investment manager with Hasso-Plattner Ventures here in Potsdam. The venture that you just heard was mentioned both from the minister and the ambassador. Next to him is Tiaran O'Reilly. He is a partner at Early Bird Investment here in Berlin. Recently moved a part of the company from Munich to Berlin, completely moved to Berlin. So welcome in the Hauptstadtregion. And last but not least, from an investor side, here we have Curtis McDonald. He is investment manager in the field of telecommunication at Hightech Gründerfonds in Bonn. On my left, your right side, we have 2 founders from Berlin and Brandenburg and 2 from Israel. And each of the founder will shortly present the business, what they will do in a short presentation. I would like to start on your right side with Konrad Fritsch from Tape TV. I think, Konrad, you have a short video to show us.
Yeah, 120-second pitch. Okay, Tape TV, what we do is created entertainment music television. Why we do it? Because MTV is really crap, and when I sit on the TV in the front, I saw never interesting things, and I asking me, why is not interesting? I love watching TV, and so we personalize it. Personalized by your own likes, by social word, by smart editors. We make a cocktail from a good punter, and the idea is your TV see you. I can talk with you, and it's a fucking awesome entertainment music television right here, right now. That's the idea. And the idea, it's more easy when you see this picture. It's my music finds me. We switch the net. This is not finding anymore. It's not the search net. It's not the communication net. It's entertainment net. This is the next big thing you saw in the picture here. What is the next big thing? Entertainment and net is the next big thing. And so what we do now, we make a relaunch, and you see this. This is a trailer, 40 seconds. What we do is it in one film.
Okay, look. Do you see this?
This is the future.
This detects what you're craving and makes it for you.
You don't know what you want. This is entertainment. We find it in you and we search it. This is big data, but it's too much time for now. This is 7 employees. We have a lot of formats. We have 5.5 million users, and we are the biggest in Germany. Thank you.
Thank you, Konrad. And next is Yari Farel. He is co-founder and CEO of Just Add in Tel Aviv.
How do I switch to?
They switch.
They switch it. Cool. So I don't have a movie. Hi, nice to meet you, everyone. Thanks for inviting us here to Berlin. In a second, you will see here a very quick QR code. If someone is familiar with QR code, that you can just, here it is. That's all I'm here to say. If someone has a smartphone, please scan it. And in the internet connection here, it should work. It should tell the whole story. Not as fancy as a movie, but once you're in, I think that you will enjoy it. Yes, please, all of you. Just scan it. What we are all about. So we are an ad tech company. We are an advertising technology company. We came to understand that if an advertiser would like to do an amazing, interactive, rich media advertisement, it requires coding. If it needs to work on smartphones, on iOS, on Android, on tablets, on smart TVs, etc. And when you're talking with an advertiser about coding, it's really crazy. It's not possible. So our solution allows anyone with the ability or the gift to do creative stuff to now actually do amazing interactive ads with no knowledge about technology, nothing, just like you create a PowerPoint slide. And again, it's all written here, and that's that. If you would have any questions or anything, just let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next is Moshe Wagnin. He's the founder and CEO of UAPI. How do you call it?
UAPI.
UAPI. Okay.
I want to make your life complicated, so just quick about what we do. It's probably all you know, the big problem with the current ecosystem that all of us have to run to the App Store to find apps, and it becomes really chaotic. It's impossible to find apps that you really need. So we have decided that this ecosystem doesn't work, and we come up with a different way how to connect apps to people. Rather than let the people look for apps, we created a platform that direct apps to the right people. We use heavy technology to try to match them. What's this? So what we do, obviously, to every mobile app developer, every developer for different apps can, we offer them to to detect their users before really the search, and that's the idea. Once your users are start to search for apps, they're getting lost. So the idea is to drive them apps before they lose. The challenges today for apps, if they want to promote their apps, the cost extremely expensive. If you want to just spend money on different advertising, which we think it currently doesn't really work well on mobile. So you better find different routes how to use it. So finding users is really complex, and app developers don't fully understand it. You develop a very nice app, and then you have a problem. How do you market it? So it's extremely difficult, and it's really time-consuming for every app developer. So our vision is really, as I've said before, developers and publishers, they must break free from the App Store. So don't think about App Store as a solution for you to promote your app. It's just a place to position it, but not to promote it. So just a couple things here to say. And really, this is the next big thing of mobile content innovation and distribution. How do you distribute your app? It's become extremely complicated. We should look at the app as a natural evolution of new media. I mean, app, it's a big message for a branding advertiser to promote their name. It's not only just a game. There's a branding name behind any app. So our big concept is to look for users through their activity. I mean, the users have activities over the day. If they're watching TV, is browsing web, everywhere they go, that's a place where you can find your users. And that's where our platform that we have developed will help any mobile publisher or mobile marketing firms or app developers to find their users through our platform wherever they are. That's it. Thank you.
And last but not least, Felix Petersen.
Hi. We all
CEO and founder.
My turn on, yes. So we all have strong opinions, right? We eat a really good burger and we say, hey, this must be the best burger I've ever eaten. Or you see a B movie and you say, this is the worst B movie I've ever seen. We have opinions about all kinds of things all day. I'm not talking about big reviews where you sit down, you know, because you've had this crappy hotel experience for 3 weeks and you really write this long rant. I'm talking about small opinions that you have about things. And of course, we are publishing them all over the internet right now, but there's no one home, like there's a home for video, that's YouTube, or a home for pictures, that's Flickr. There's no one home for your opinions in a way that you can also search them and make them useful for yourself. So we said, let's develop a really small, simple thing where I can vent those opinions. So I can say I have a strong opinion about a person, a place, or a thing. And then we've developed this little small interface where you always use the same format. So in this case, you would say the Museum of Modern Art in New York, MoMA, is the best place for modern art in New York. You can add a picture, and then you can do the same thing about really anything. Places, so on the right would be a hotel, or about your opinion about Steve Jobs. But it could also be a Facebook friend of yours. I could say Konrad is the best. What are you the best, Konrad? I should look it up probably. Konrad is the best friend ever, exactly. And then, or Caesar salad is the worst low-fat salad, which I guess is true. So then all these opinions end up in a feed, like like we know it from Twitter or Facebook. So you read these things that your friends say or people you follow say about music, or that this rooftop coffee bar is the best place for coffee in the sun in San Francisco. Or Alec Baldwin is the best player of words with friends ever. Not sure who's the friend there. And then I have two options, amen or hell no. So if I agree with the person, it's kind of like our like button. You say, I agree, it makes sense. So you're basically voting on that opinion and are accelerating or amplifying that opinion. Or you say hell no. The trick is when you say hell no, when you say hell no, you have to say what you think is the best place for coffee in the sun in San Francisco. Right? So you can it kind of is an unlike button. You can say, boo, it's not true. But you have to be productive and you have to say what you think is the best. So through that, we are basically getting lists of everything. So it's not just the opinion you said, but we're taking all these strong opinions, putting them on top of each other because we have this rigid format. And then you can go in and you can say, well, what is the best place for pizza in New York? Or, what is the best Wes Anderson movie? Or even what is the best article in this week's Economist? Really anything, whether timely or ever, whether really small, the best latte macchiato on Kastanienallee to, the best shish kebab in Tel Aviv to the best burger anywhere in the world. So it's completely horizontal. You can talk about whatever you want, as long as it's an opinion. Then, of course, you can switch it around. Imagine a Twitter where you can click on any word and you could see anything that's been said about that person. So the flip side of the list is that you can see anything that's ever been said about Paul Simon. So basically, Amen is sort of think about it as a structured status update or structured opinion service, where every word you see you can click on and you find all the opinions aggregated about that person. So you can actually go in and you can ask the question, well, according to my friends, what is the movie I should watch right now? So it's kind of a mix of sort of a structured discovery engine and a fun little game that you play with your friends, because at the end of the day, who doesn't do that at a bar, right? I mean, people constantly get into fights over who's the best football player or have a rant about their opinions, and we are basically being that platform. We started last year in Berlin. We're 11 people now, slowly, continuously, successfully growing the platform. We have over 2 million lists now. So it's this thing that takes some time to catch on. Of course, it's a new social service that people that people need to get used to, but we believe it's more useful than other things that's been around, and therefore hope that all of you will try it out. Go to the App Store, search for Amen, and then you can download it too. You can also use it on the web under getamen.com. Thanks.
Thank you, Felix. So I would like to start the discussion actually looking at the regions and discuss a little bit the difference and what it actually makes what makes a region a good startup region. And I thought I'd just start with you, Tiran. You decided to come to Berlin after being in Munich for many years. What actually made you decide to change and move completely to Berlin as one of the very established venture capitalists?
I mean, it was obviously some facts. We just saw that we were having more portfolio companies here. We were seeing much more opportunities here. But it was also just the feeling of walking through the city and realizing that even though it's very, very early days, there's something happening that is close to critical mass. So there are a couple of things missing in Berlin, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but there's certainly a critical mass of raw energy and talented people that want to build stuff. Mm-hmm. And the internet has allowed you to, build great stuff everywhere. So you don't have to be in this great, technical center. You don't have to be, close to certain companies. You can really be anywhere. And it looks like Berlin has a great DNA to attract talented people, and because it's so cheap to build stuff, you can build it here. So we said, look, let's not be complacent. We expect our entrepreneurs not to be complacent, and obviously there were some complaints, but we said if we want to be an integral part of the scene, we have to wake up here in the morning time and go to bed, and so we said, let's do it. Okay.
So do you share the opinion that some of the media is writing that actually Berlin and Tel Aviv are likely the most strongest and interesting hotspots for startups in the next decade? Do you share that opinion?
I would add, I think there'll be a couple more. I think London is going to be very strong. I think what's going to be the really interesting question is a lot of people, and especially the media, always says, look, this is the next Silicon Valley, or Israel is a smaller version of the Silicon Valley. And I think that's a mentality which will get you into a lot of troubles, because if Berlin tries to rebuild Silicon Valley, it's going to end in disaster. And I think Israel is great because it also focused on its own strengths. So the question is, what kind of own DNA do you have, and what differentiates you? And I think certainly, and we discussed this earlier, is that Berlin, it's sort of a lot of people said this, a sort of intersection of arts and technology. It's very urban, it's very inspiring. whereas arguably Israel and Tel Aviv is a much better place, at least today, to build technology-driven companies. There's way more, research in certain technologies. There's way more know-how, and there's also a cultural affinity to the US, which helps a lot. So I agree, both will be very, very strong, but I think London and some other places will have a good shot at it too.
Felix, could your startup have started somewhere else, or was Berlin the place, or was it never a discussion? And what are you missing in Berlin? Maybe we also say why Berlin is great for you. Sure. Was there any thought ever to start the company somewhere else?
Yes, there was a while when we were contemplating San Francisco. Okay. Because my co-founder, he did Twitter in San Francisco, so he had some affinity there. My other co-founder is from the US. So that was a discussion for a short time. Within Europe or Germany, it was clear that would be Berlin. I am from Berlin, born and raised here. It's my second company I'm doing in Berlin, and the first one we actually we were discussing Cologne or Berlin, and then quickly decided on Berlin. It depends. I think it's actually true what Kirian is saying, that it doesn't matter where you are with the consumer-driven internet, in the sense that you don't need any infrastructure on the ground, right? I mean, you can, as long as you have a fast internet connection and a laptop, you can build a consumer internet startup today anywhere in the world. However, the inspiration, the atmosphere, the energy, and last but not least, being able to attract really good people, it plays a big role. I think for the initial phase, and this is why we opted against San Francisco, eventually you just need as little interruption as possible. You need to get it off the ground, you need to build something very small, see if it actually works, see if you even have something there. 9 out of 10 times what you build is actually crap, and you have to go back to the drawing board because even your friends find it boring. And in that phase, I think it doesn't really matter where you are. You can build that wherever you find the best sort of happiness for yourself. And if you have to move the whole team somewhere else because you're actually very rooted in Hanover, and maybe you went there to school, and you have a great team in place, it makes no sense to move them to Berlin. It's just disruption. Everyone needs a new apartment. Everyone gets lost at Berghain. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, right? You want to be heads down and develop your product. Once you start growing even a little bit, and at the stage that we're now, where we need to find world-class people, for certain roles in the company, then Berlin definitely helps, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if you talk to someone in Amsterdam or in London, if they're flexible at all, they will move to Berlin, because a lot of them have visited, like it, said I wanted to work there anyway. We actually get approached by people saying, I want to go to Berlin, and I made the short list of interesting companies. You're on it. Let's talk.
Interesting. Looking to Israel, maybe Yarif, you can address that. You started in Tel Aviv. We heard that Tel Aviv is the Berlin of Israel, party scene, etc., etc. Yes. If you didn't say that, what is the conditions and what is the framework in Tel Aviv, and why became Tel Aviv such a strong hub for startups?
So hi, Tel Aviv is for anyone that never came to Israel or Tel Aviv, you should come. It's really a cool city, very similar to Berlin, just with a beach. Sometimes there are wars, but there is a beach. So we have the river, we have the beach, but other than that, it's very similar. Very nice folks, very nice time. Don't come in August, it's too hot. But these are all the disclaimers. Tel Aviv, as everyone knows, is really the bloodline of Israel in general. There are other high-tech scenes, but really Tel Aviv is really the only one. Everyone coming out of the army and the intelligent core finds himself doing something called a startup. So in Israel there is a very big funnel of the army picks the best brains to do something for a couple of years, but when they finish it, they remain with their brains and they can do other things. So that's the lifeline of the Israeli companies. And Tel Aviv just everything is in Tel Aviv, all the banks, all the VCs is a neighborhood next to Tel Aviv, but it's basically the same. Just to comment on your previous, I don't believe that, I believe that for at least our story. starting out in Tel Aviv is perfect. We all live there, so it's, yes. It's great to get started. The technology part is fabulous there. But now for us, the challenge is not the technology, it's really to have more and more support for customers and more customers. And yes, we will move to the States. At least some of us will, just to be closer to the customers. It's true that we can support them online, but it's really not the same having people on the ground. So now the challenge for us is more and more revenues and more streamlining the business. And part of it is being close to the customers, which are overseas.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe Konrad, could tape TV happen anywhere else?
Yeah, in Rostock maybe. No, no, this doesn't work because for us to start the business, all our partners are here. All the labels are here and or have offices here, and the artists are here. And when you build such not only a tech company, a tech content company, an entertainment company, you must feel the heartbeat from the culture. And the culture is here in Berlin more and more bigger than other countries because it's an international culture and music is international. And so the first step from Tape TV must be here in Berlin because you have a lot of entrepreneurs here. You have the feeling, you feel what has happened in music. We have on last Thursday, we have a show with Max Herre. Now is he on the first place. And it's an amazing story. It's only building here in Berlin. But the next step, when we go to France, I need an office in Paris, and we go to London, I need an office in London for UK. But this is smaller, but I need a direct bridge to the culture, and this is not happened when I go on an island with a laptop.
Okay.
Or maybe I can do it. No. Yeah. No.
Looking from an investor side, Curtis, you have a lot of investments that you do at High Tech Gründerfonds. So what role does Berlin play, from your perspective within all your portfolio? And I would like to, find out what is what are the ingredients actually that make it different to other cities, and what role does Berlin play in your portfolio?
Well, I hate to stereotype different regions around the world and also in Germany, but it's true that recently we've definitely seen an uptick, not just in startups in Berlin, but a specific subcategory of startups, especially those oriented towards consumer internet, towards media. As people have already said today, Berlin has a very strong culture. It's got a very strong kind of hip, upbeat culture. It's, as people have said, it's a sexy city. And being involved in that from a startup perspective means that a lot of the founders are able to tap into that with regards to content creation, anything that's revolving around startup internets where it's all about what the user experience is. And that's, I think, very different from a lot of other parts of the country where it's more about robotics or about automation or about how when the customer is more business oriented.
Okay. Moshe, I think when we discussed in the preparation part, there is differences actually really from an Israeli point of view in terms of the types of startups that they have in Israel compared to what's happening here in Berlin. How do you see that? I mean, you're running a business out of Israel. Of course, as Yariv said, the market is small, so you have to look abroad very early on in your, when you're developing. What is the biggest difference that you see from your perspective?
Yeah, actually, in Israel, after I founded the company a year ago, and we already opened an office 3 months ago in San Francisco. So even though we are still in the development stage, we already opened an office in order to be ready for the next phase of the marketing. Since we are B2B, really you cannot operate from everywhere. You have to be close to the market and feel the market. And we are, in Israel, there's one of the strengths of companies in Israel is relationship with USA. It's a very strong, and especially the West Coast and also the East Coast. So this relationship really helped us to bridge from product to market quite faster, I think, than Berlin companies. and I know pretty well many people in USA, West Coast or East Coast. So this has really helped us on the marketing stage. That's why many Israeli companies, they start first with the USA market. And as you know, it's a big market, very, 300 million people, while Europe, every country you have to understand the culture, so it makes it quite complicated to penetrate into European market. So that's why we in Israel feel more comfortable to market USA compared to, I guess, companies in Berlin. That's from the marketing aspect. And the technology, obviously, in Israel, and I think in Berlin also, I think there are very good universities here. But I think in Israel, because the last 20 or 25 years, many companies have built, so there's a culture of startup. It takes time to build a culture. It doesn't really become overnight to decide, here to go. Berlin right now is a startup city. It takes some time to create it, especially more for the culture and the courage of people to take risks. Many people in Israel, they just build a company, they invest their own money, and they have to start from zero. That's from the entrepreneur side, but from the funding side in Israel is quite well developed, and also it took a long time to bring it into, to build it. There is a lot of money coming into the market. People would like to see, to be part of this startup nation stuff. But I think it could happen also in Berlin. There's something a little bit disagree. I think it could happen everywhere. It could happen in Berlin. I think there is very international, what I found here in Berlin after my only second visit. It's a very international culture, so it's quite, I think it can be done here in Berlin too, so people can build companies and go abroad.
What I heard and what you read a lot is that the Israeli startup scene is much more dominated by tech startups compared to the region here in Berlin. Yair, from your perspective, you have both sides. Probably you've seen the scene in Israel. Now you're part of Hustle Platinum Ventures in Potsdam. What is your take on that? Like, do you see differences, clear differences in both areas?
Sure, there are. The main emphasis in the Berlin scene is on B2C. You see a lot of apps, a lot of web applications, e-commerce. You don't see that in Israel. The amount of B2C companies in Israel are, you can count them on one hand. Some of them are very successful. You may know MyHeritage, Soluto, Waze, social navigation is doing very well. But the majority of them are B2B and hardcore technology, semiconductors, telecommunication, very algorithms, very hardcore technology. And I would think that it stems from two things. One is the fact that all people go to the military and are exposed there and are asked there to develop state-of-the-art technologies. And when they are done with the military after 3 years or even more, they have a lot of experience. They have very good friends, bonds, and they go out together and take whatever they learned in the military and implement it in the business world. That's one thing. The other is that if you look back to the 70s, when Intel came to Israel, and thereafter many other US companies arrived to Israel and have today not marketing and regional offices in Israel, but rather R&D headquarters, like Google, Microsoft, IBM. All those companies brought a culture of R&D, and they brought working places for many engineers. And unlike here in Germany, there is a lot of, chutzpah. It's also in German. When you go as an engineer, and engineers in Israel do aspire not only to work in startups, they do aspire to work for IBM or for Intel. But as engineers in Germany work for BMW. But after 10 years or 5 years that they work for Intel, they say, I know to do that better. I don't need this manager to tell me how to develop semiconductors. I know to do that better. And they go and do their own startups and sell it to Intel.
And this you don't see here in Germany. The automotive industry, there is a lot of innovation in Germany, in Siemens, in the automotive industry, but it is inside. And it's those companies that are the most hard for startups to work with. We have a startup company in our portfolio that tries to sell to the automotive industry. You need to be around for 10 years before you're going to be in the next series of BMW. And that's not the culture of a startup. And usually those companies, they don't buy startups because they develop their own innovation inside. So that's a difference, and that affects the entire ecosystem and why Israel is very tech-driven.
And what does it do for your work? Like, I mean, you're looking for tech startups, or is your investment, like your portfolio, as broad as like in other larger VCs? That are you focusing only on technology?
So we're focusing on technology and mainly on software technology. True, it's not as easy as we thought it would be to find investments that are technology rich in Germany, pure startups that are in that area. That's why we do also investments in Israel that are software related. But as any other VC, we're very opportunistic. If there is a good business also in e-commerce, we will do that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Nico, maybe you're out of the region. You're actually based in Hamburg.
Yeah.
Which is not so far away. It's 90 minutes. So we actually, if you look at the... It's Greater Berlin, yeah. Greater Hamburg, Berlin, how you call this? The Berlin-Brandenburg region in Hamburg. From an outsider's perspective, yeah, what is your take on the region here in Berlin and Brandenburg? And if you have experience, maybe in Israel, if you know anything, could you comment on that from your perspective?
Well, I always think that Berlin is the greater Hamburg suburb, but I wanted to make one remark regarding the army. It kind of strikes me that most of the stuff in Israel comes out of the army or after the army. I always have, and you said that you take your brain to the army, you develop it, and afterwards you do something with it. And in Germany, you kind of leave your brain behind, then go to the army, and later on try to reclaim your brain somewhere. At least that was my experience. Anyway,
that's a difference. Okay.
Anyway, I really like the combination of Hamburg and Berlin because I think those 90 minutes, that's something that people use for commute every day in other areas of the world. And I think the combination is really cool to have what Conrad said. You have this vibrating city here that does all kinds of weird things, and people drink latte macchiatos all day long. And then we have Hamburg, which is twice the size, but half the size, but twice as productive as Berlin. And that clearly shows. I mean, I think we get more stuff done. And from our perspective, what we try to do is we try to focus more on the technology part and not so much on the lifestyle and let's have one more latte macchiato part, to really think about what technologies will come and how do they evolve, and to try to be at the forefront of those developments. And what I really find the best thing about Hamburg Berlin is that you can choose where you want to live and where you want to work, and you can go back and forth, and it's really not that big of a hassle, except of no net between Hamburg and Berlin, which really sucks. But aside from that, I think you can kind of combine both, the best of both worlds.
And looking into your investments, you told me that you look into technology development in startups. So where do you source the ideas, and where do you source your founders?
Well, we actually have two things that we do. One is that we try to connect the founders and the ideas, either their idea or our idea, and the technology, and we provide the technology for the first so-called minimum viable product, for the first release. And that's one thing that we do in Hamburg, and where we urge the founders to either stay in Hamburg or come to Hamburg. And then we invest on a very small scale in other companies, and I have to admit that the last two investments I did were both in Berlin. So I'm very flexible in that, but the The last thing we did was Room Beats here in Berlin, which aims to do context-sensitive advertising in images, which I think will be the next big thing if you look at the way tablet publishing evolves. So I'm basically looking at companies in Hamburg and Berlin, and when I get presentations sent in from other people, other places in Germany, I'm like, you got to be kidding. I'm not going to Augsburg just to talk to you or have a portfolio company there. You either come to Hamburg or Berlin or we forget it.
Okay. Looking at the framework of a city and what was addressed in the statements of the ambassador and the minister, both mentioned that, of course, the role of universities as a hub of knowledge and creativity plays a role. Do you see things missing in that respect? For example, start maybe with the Berlin founders. Do universities play a role in the terms of where you recruit talent? Is that anything you were confronted with, Felix, in team or in terms of finding talent and software development? Anything? Do you think that things should be changed a little bit more?
Well, to say we're not holding it against you if you went to university. I personally had the pleasure of spending 1 year at Technical University in Berlin and didn't find it quite that inspiring. But no, I don't know. It's hard for me to comment on it. I think that there's definitely a place, of course, for a university in terms of creating more technology-driven culture. I mean, that's clearly one of the things in Berlin that sort of the newest wave of startups that we've been seeing is lacking sometimes. It'd definitely be interesting to see a couple of bolder plays. I mean, I like the idea of building B2C stuff that very quickly you can verify or falsify, but there is definitely room for sort of a more long shot, more technology-driven kind of things that are also more defendable, of course. Yeah, I mean, Berlin doesn't have that culture. The connections are still, they're working on it, and we are being contacted by the entrepreneurship program of like the TU. I know that, of course, only Potsdam has a HPI, has a strong connection to HPV, of course. I mean, there's definitely also more technology-driven things going on than probably in Berlin. In Potsdam, that culture is more there. Yeah, I don't know. Other than that, we definitely don't have these things like Stanford, where the students themselves, together with the professors, are already sort of thinking when they are choosing their master thesis, for example, thinking about what kind of company they could become, and there's a more sort of natural transition between being a student and being an entrepreneur. Still here, I think most people go to school, finish school, especially in engineering fields, and then think what they're going to do. So then, either they write a bunch of applications to the big, DAX companies, Siemens, BMW, etc. Or maybe they're catching the startup virus and saying, okay, I want to do my own thing. But I think most people only think about it once they're done, and I think that's something that there could be definitely a stronger interconnection for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yariv and Moshe, could you comment on that? How strong is the university sector connected to the capital to actually create the startup culture? Is that?
Yeah, I don't think they're that strong as like USA. So I don't think the universities in Israel really have a big impact. I think the big impact is really the military, as Yariv said. So I think the most influence comes from the military and from the culture of courage. So startup is really about taking risks. That's the major thing. When people take a risk to build something from zero and again put all their life into it, that makes the big difference. Then the rest will come. That's the first thing. I mean, you can have a lot of money, a lot of venture capitals, etc., but if the people don't have the courage to take the risk on their own for a couple years, and some people taking low salary and a lot of that, and they don't ready for that, they cannot accomplish what they want. So So again, universities are not, I don't see them as a big part, at least in my part. I don't think universities, overall education, I don't think is a catalyst for innovations. I think schools are good not to prevent from courage, not more than that. That's the way I look at schools. So maybe I'm not the right person.
No, we asked Jerry.
I must admit, I went to university just because I promised my parents. After that, and it was a joke. I knew it was a joke, but I promised them, and I went. And the other person, I would concur with him. We don't hold it against you, so we get a CV, and someone says "cum sum laude" from whatever, and say "good," right?
Good.
Very good. It's really not that interesting. It's much more about. So if you're a techie and you're coming for a tech position, we would ask you a couple of questions. If you have a degree or don't have a degree, if you can answer them, then great, and you're a good person. And if you are doing other stuff, then we need to, I don't know, evaluate you differently, what you did, what you're looking for, how, it's a startup, so you don't get a desk and the marketing department doesn't come and give you a tour. You normally get some sort of a PC that no one is using and you need to give results now. So if you can do that, we don't really care where you went to school.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, please, Curtis.
So, I just wanted to expand on that. Universities, especially from what I've seen in Germany, are very much undervalued, but the problem, I think, is mostly a cultural one, both from recruiting employees and from a deal flow perspective of students that have worked on something and now they want to make it into a live business. There's still a kind of a stigma associated with entrepreneurship that is not the same from a parental or a girlfriend perspective as saying that you're going to work at McKinsey or Siemens or any of the other companies that give you more of a little bit of stability. And I think that this kind of culture of risk is, I still meet people also in the US, but especially in Germany, where they talk about an idea and they want to do it, but they introduce themselves as an entrepreneur to people, and people say, so what, you're saying you're unemployed? So it's something that needs to change. I think that with a little bit more successes coming out of Germany, coming out of Berlin, coming out of younger entrepreneurs that are doing this fresh out of the university, that will change. But as we've already said today, that takes time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, especially, everybody, is relating to the history of American university as being, successful, startup environments where many companies, started off, from, at MIT, you name it, everywhere. I think many countries in the world try to copy that. Is this something that is missing here? Sharon, you said some of the stuff, of course, is missing in the region. Would you say at the intersection of universities and where ideas are generated, is that something where the region here could be better?
I mean, definitely, if the ecosystem wants to be broader, so we want to focus on what we're doing today, there's no need for a top world-class engineering school. Would be nice, but we're not. If the ecosystem wants to be broader, and who knows what's going to be, the next big wave, and maybe in agricultural technologies and software, I have no idea. Probably our current knowledge base isn't going to be able to do that very well. So my point is just changing the university system, changing a general culture, which I think in Berlin is different, but I'm with you, it's a problem. Nothing we can do, nothing politicians will do will change it in our experienced lifetime. And I think the only thing that this region can change, where it has a huge, big opportunity, is getting the most talented people from the world to come here. I don't think it's much easier than saying, hey, let's get, the universities here are great, don't get me wrong, they're probably not world-class, but to make one of those into world-class computer science engineering school is going to be a 20-year, triple-digit million kind of task. But changing our immigration policies and our marketing policies to get the best people from the world into this region is so much more easier and so much more effective. 5 years ago, or maybe until the World Cup 2006, the image of Germany, especially in the US and even England, maybe was kind of like thanks but no thanks. Now Germany has this amazing image around the world, and even though people like to, bang on Angela Merkel, it's actually become a very attractive place to move to. If you look at the German courses around the world, spiking, being sold out, so we would be completely dumb not to use that sentiment to get the best people from all over the world to build stuff here.
So do you think we need a campaign to do this? I mean, like do advertising and that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
because I think it was just a campaign started to promote.
Campaign is fine, but it's more about actively enabling startups to much more actively target these people and to just be like, okay, I mean, let's do it. I think this is the way Australia works. Australia says, look, it's very harsh. If you can add value to our economy, here's the red carpet, here's some money, welcome in. Germany says, well, we treat everybody equally. So, we're going to weigh you against somebody who maybe is going to be on sort of the dole here. And it's a very rapid mentality change that is needed. But I think it's more creating the infrastructure to allow companies to do it. The other thing which could be done much more aggressive, which is missing here, is a very simple thing, is big tech companies. Most great startups, some exceptions, come out of big tech companies where people leave, they're fed up, whatever. We don't have those. So we could try, and because this is a cheap place, talented people want to work here, the city should be much, much more aggressive in identifying what are sort of upcoming bigger tech companies or what their business divisions, and getting them here. That's going to be much more promising than working on culture, university, and all those kind of things.
Can I expand with that?
Yeah,
that?
Felix, please.
Just a thought. I mean, what we see happening right now, the situation that makes Berlin so attractive, or the energy and what everyone's talking about, arguably that came out of the vacuum and the limbo and the absence of government after the wall came down, right? It was basically, you can really trace it down to empty factories, unclear property situation in the East after the wall came down, where people just were able to occupy something and say, let's do something here, right? Let's open a club, let's do this. And so arguably it was the absence of government. So the question is more, how can you keep that sort of unregulated? And that was very un-German in a way. And I think that's why Berlin is now very un-German. I mean, it's always had different DNA, but that absence of regulation and kind of chaotic situation that was there was something that was unheard of in Germany, especially in Germany. And that's what this came out of now. It's not the result of a government initiative, not at all. In fact, they've only been waking up to it in the last half year. So I don't have the answer, but I think it's something to keep in mind that it was actually the opposite of a government initiative, campaign or initiative. So let's maybe that should teach us something for how to go forward.
Thanks, very interesting. Yeah, please, Nico.
Adding on to that, I think if the Germans understand that it makes more sense to take their companies international, then internationally we'll get more respect for the companies that we found, and more people will come here. This is something that will just happen over time. But I think thus far, most of the companies still think that the German market is big enough, whereas companies in Israel or in the Nordics know that their home market is so small, they have to go international, and don't mind doing that. And I still think that's the German, kind of laziness that's combined with this risk, the fear of risk, that we just stay in the German market because it's so small and simple.
No, maybe you speak for Hamburg. In Berlin, that's very different these days.
No. I mean, look at Tape TV. They're still not everywhere in the world, and they're trying. But it's also a matter of money that has to flow into those companies, and that has to flow faster and faster and faster and more. So you can expand faster. And one tip for recruiting: we always just ask for the GitHub account. If somebody who applies doesn't have a GitHub account, it doesn't matter whether they have summa cum laude or whatever. We're not interested.
Okay, this is not for laziness why we don't go to UK.
I know.
With
Conrad, you're not lazy.
And the gamer and all this is a $50 million game. But I totally agree that we have feel it is much more easier to get the best people from the world and not change the university system with all the old Professoren and all this stuff. And we have not, we have on the tech part, I totally agree. On the communication part, it's a little bit different because I have a lot of communication guys in my company and they studied in Berlin and this is an awesome university for communication, the UDK. And so this is a more bridge to an entertainment company. But what I'm wondering is why the government not make advertising outside of Germany that we need employees. I searching for a marketing guy, data-driven marketing guy, not this communication brand-driven thing, what you find here in Berlin, a real tech data-driven marketing guy in UK or Silicon Valley. I have no clue where can I find him. Okay, I go there with a scenario. Hey, come to me, we're friendly.
They have those people.
But I think the what you started the discussion on talent. If you talk to other companies, many of them face the issue of like fast integration and getting the papers. Is there anything that has to be changed? I mean, you addressed that. Maybe you want to discuss this here. Sure. What is your experience in that?
Let's have a look at the blue card policy. Same as the green card, the EU now has a blue card, and I think that starting August 1st, it's valid also for Germany. That if you have, you need two criteria in order to be eligible for visa to Germany, if you don't have a German passport or any other measurement. One, you need to have a university degree, or to have 5 years of equivalent experience in another very well-based company. So that's the criteria. First criteria. Second, you have to have a certain amount of annual salary, which is equivalent, let's say, for around, if you're an IT expert, you have a reduction, and therefore it's about 2,900 euro per month. Now, I don't know how many of your employees receive that kind of money. Certainly, if you are the founder, you take no salary, and it doesn't matter whether I had experience in another company. As been said, if you know the job, you can come over. With German fertility rate, it's not a question of the startups anymore. It's a question of the entire economy here. The Blue Card initiative is the right step in the right direction, but the criteria should be much, much, much lower.
Right, because I mean, on paper it sounds good, but the problem is that the people that are falling out of that bracket are exactly the kind of people who are trying to hire. Yeah. The young kid who just built an app, somewhere in the world, basically 18, 19 years old, wants to come to Berlin, and that's exactly the kind of person you cannot hire. It works for specialists, and I mean, I guess, the Australia example, that's in there to a certain extent. If you say people that fulfill these criteria, they're definitely adding value to the economy, fine, but it doesn't really help us that much, really.
How it is in Israel, Moshe Yari? What is your experience? Do you have any trouble recruiting, or is it easy because you do it locally? Or
No, there is trouble. I think because of the demand. So there are so many companies. It's not easy to get find good people that you're looking for. It's a big challenge, and there's no really immigration to Israel for technical people. I don't know. I don't know why, by the way. So in Israel, it's become very tough to hire people in those days. Salaries relatively high, and they get more and more close to the USA even. So it put pressure on startups, especially when they start building the company and they don't have all those millions of dollars from venture capitals. Once they get those millions from the venture capitals, so I call it the party has begun, so they have more money to spend. But before that, it's quite, it's really complicated. So we typically, what we do, because it's a startup, so we share with the people, the company. We give more options, shares with the people, and people like it. They are willing to work for less salary
in exchange of options and shares, because they want to have a dream, and at least I found it a good way to share, and then I don't have all the cake for yourself. It's better for you to build a company for the long term.
That's, for example, that's very untypical German. When we start employee stock options plans, ESOP in companies, employees in Germany, they say, ESOP what? Where's the salary? So it's not that you can negotiate and say, okay, take little salary, take a lot of percentages in the company. They say, no, we're not interested in that.
So is that a mental, is that just mentality or culture? Is there something that, I think Chiran said that, we want to address it, and also Curtis, that the problem in the culture that people want to take less risks here in Germany? Is that?
It's a culture, I think. Yeah. It's a culture.
In Israel, we hired someone very recently. It's the second job that they had. She's very young, very talented. And just taking your point, we gave her a smaller salary and some options, and she immediately asked about the acceleration of the ESOP. How does it imply in this event and this event? She was like suddenly an expert in ESOP. Good. She has no legal or whatever, but she knows what to ask. So it's really a cultural thing. It was very clear to her. She came prepared. The person interviewing her didn't even know all of the answers, so it was funny. And
it's not that Germans are not risk averse. They take risk as long as you can deduct it from the taxes. Okay. But seriously, if you look at the insolvency law, for example, in Germany, as a Geschäftsführer, you have high liabilities. If you don't file for insolvency on time, for example, you can be criminally offended and are not allowed to found another company, be a Geschäftsführer of another company for 5 years. You don't have that in Israel. You don't have that in the US. You always have a fresh start. And that's something that has to change.
And it's actually something you read about on blogs frequently, blah, 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 insolvent. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the end of the story. A lot of times, 3 weeks later, you read like, oh, by the way, but because you are required to basically raise your finger, and of course with sort of with non-revenue venture-backed model, you can basically, you will run out of money in 6 months, but that's normal. That's part of the game. But I don't know the exact laws, but basically you have to then, I think 3-4 months or so before you run out of money, when you can't cover it out of your operational business, you have to declare insolvency. Yes. Even if the financing round is just 3-4 weeks out. Absolutely. And for an e-commerce business, that's super, super hurtful, obviously, if you have to declare insolvency. Even if 3 weeks later you can take it back, that sort of stain is on your vest, and who's going to order from a Neckermann,
And of course, insolvency, notarization, stuff like that you don't see in the US, it costs money, and a lot of money.
Yeah, It's the same with legalizing people. So I mean, now you have the blue card, but even people with a university degree, it costs us $1,500 to $2,000 on a case-by-case basis, because you have to argue the cases. You have to, even with a university degree, you have to prove that you couldn't find someone in the German market. And it's doable. It's just paperwork, but it takes a lawyer every time, and it's an overhead of $1,500 or $2,000.
You don't even know it is successful, right? Because it all.
No, usually they are. I mean, there is some things that are fairly. But that's why it's so ridiculous, right? It's fairly predictable. You can make it happen if you want to get someone here from the US. He has a university degree. Eventually, you'll get it through. It's just a pain in the ass. So why don't they just make a more transparent, clear rule for it?
And even if it is successful, it can still take very long.
Yeah.
I mean, 2-3 months is not that extraordinary, and for a startup.
So you slow down actually the company speed, because.
Well, you've got a perfect candidate that you want to hire, and maybe you're building a team around him if it's someone more senior, and all of a sudden the company is on hold for 2 months because number one, you don't have him, and number two, you hope you'll get him, but it's not sure yet. And by the way, he's probably being recruited by several other companies, maybe one that's local that can hire him immediately.
So is this something, as a group you would say, at least the German part, that we need to work on that, because this is something that is crucial for a vivid startup scene beyond Berlin, Hamburg, of course, because it's something that is generally important in Germany to address that.
Another example is the severance payments. So if you take someone to a startup and you already need to, if you fire the guy after the half year of a test, then you already need to pay like 3 months of salary. In Israel, for example, the maximum is one month. It's a lot of money that
goes on your liability side of the balance sheet.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's at least the exception. I think if it's under 10 employees, that's
right.
There's something there at least.
You're more flexible. Yeah.
But companies that have been around for a year or so, they have more than 10 employees at that point. But it's still an additional risk.
That's right.
I would argue, though, that those kind of, maybe a bit provocatively, for the 5% of startups and entrepreneurs that make the difference in the ecosystem, it's irrelevant, because you don't think about insolvency laws when you start a company or whatever. Where it is relevant is people starting, I'm going to maybe exaggerate a bit, restaurants, small businesses, SMEs, there you start to think about it. So again, it's something we could change, and yeah, maybe it'll help a little bit. And also in terms of, I guess, what's different in Israel is that, like, my feeling is every taxi driver is an aspiring entrepreneur, right? Like every waiter is like, okay, I want to do this. I would argue in Germany, because we're not going to get that cultural shift anytime soon, it's getting better, but it'll take so long, is all we need really is like 100,000, the top 5%, maybe not educated, but top 5% driven people to aspire to be entrepreneurs. And maybe when we think about it's, in Germany it's a bad word, elite, but maybe in terms of everything we do, educational system, how we bring people up to be entrepreneurs, we just need to focus on the top 5% driven people and encourage them. It doesn't really matter if 95%, if it's easy or not for them to find a business.
And I mean, that's one thing that I think, not that we set the wrong tone here. It's a great city to live in. It's a great time. No one's really stopping you except yourself. I mean, it's not a success factor in the sense that, we could have succeeded, but we didn't because we couldn't hire that guy. Of course, it's great, if that becomes easier, but it's really nothing that's holding you back much. It's such a high risk environment. It's just one of the things you have to deal with. And hiring the right people is a success factor that it is almost like a secret sauce. It's a secret sauce, like, if you find out a secret sauce in terms of distribution, performance marketing, whatever, I mean, that's your responsibility. Yeah. And if you're really good at it and you attract the right people, you build an amazing company. And it's not that the government will serve you, amazing candidates. So, that's part of your job, and that's part of your competitive advantage if you do that better than others. And it's really, I mean, I don't feel like anything's hindering me much. It's not that I get up in the morning and think like, that German government, they're putting me down. It's really, it's all not a big problem, really.
Okay. Because governments are always asked what we can do better. Of course, politicians say, I think we should improve. Shall we do more funding? And maybe we should shift a little bit. I would like to switch the discussion to the funding part. Where do you see necessities? Where have things changed? Is there enough money? If we look at the region right now, Berlin and Brandenburg. I mean, Joran, you moved from Munich, and that was big news in the area, of course. Is there anything that from a governmental side that should change? Let it be funding, let it be taxation, where the politicians on the regional level can do something. I'm not talking about federal law. Federal law is more difficult, and we all know that German taxation is one of the probably most complex in the world. We know that. But where do you see missing parts on the funding side?
Yeah, so there's the sense that in Berlin, because a lot of people from the outside are pretty skeptical of a lot of the sort of social movement, and they feel it's overfunded. But in reality, there's at least factor 3 to 4 times of serious capital required to build a sustainable ecosystem. So maybe in the US it's 6 times more than here. Maybe there's 100% too much or 50% too much in the US. So at least 3 times. On a regional level, it's very, very difficult. The only thing the old German mentality is, okay, startups need money, so let's come up with a state program, not like you guys, but and let's have some bankers kind of approve investments. It's just it's a disaster waiting to happen. It's going to go wrong. The only thing they could really do is, for example, say, well, look, we're going to free up 100 million and give it, to 5 or 6 funds that, will invest in kind of the region. The problem is we wouldn't want that, for example, because who knows, maybe in 3 years' time, there's nothing attractive in Berlin. I don't want to spend 50 million euros in an ecosystem. So everything will be really fudged. So we tend to focus on what local governments can do because it's tangible. You can be like, oh, this is a wish list. But the harsh reality is actually, and that's why nobody really likes to complain, is if we don't build great companies ourselves, if we don't get the money ourselves, it's, you know, that's the only way we can really help each other. I think it's nice in terms of, I think, so for me it's going to be it's a hopeless case to think that Berlin-Brandenburg with its P&L is going to pump a couple of $100 million into a couple of venture funds, so let's put that aside. So the only thing we can really do is create a general spirit, like look at what Bloomberg is doing in New York. He's not actually technically helping a lot, but if he says on his Twitter account, hey, great news from this startup, everybody's like, oh, cool, you know, right? So it's just little things like that that'll help, and then making life easier for startups. Even if it's unpopular, I think any state, so taxes are out of the, you know, we can't change it, you know, it's not worth it. Anything that is in terms of investing government money, whatever, I think in the long run won't work. Where it has worked, and a lot of people forget it, in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley started off with a lot of government research and development money. That was the beginning of Silicon Valley, not private money, nothing else. So, but that goes back to the university debate. But right. Maybe my honest answer is I don't think there's much that can be done on the venture capital side.
Okay.
In Israel, for example, in the 90s, the same was done with the Yozma initiative. 100 million was given by the government to 10 funds, 10 private funds that were allowed to do. There was no nobody was looking what is going inside the funds. The funds were just venture capital funds, private ones, and they were allowed to invest the money as they thought is appropriate. And they had an exit possibility, so the funds were allowed to buy back the money that was invested in those funds with an annual interest. So the principal plus an annual interest. So that was a very, very huge success in Israel. Actually, that was the one step that started the venture capital industry in Israel, and today per capita it's the highest in the world, because it was very targeted, very very time-bound, and therefore it was a success.
Maybe look into the founder side. From your perspectives, Yerif and Moshe, what is your experience in that, and how's the relationship to governmental, let's call it initiatives, ideas in Israel, and did they work, or what did work? Did you?
I think personally, maybe the Yozma part, it's a bit before my time, so I cannot comment on that, but I think government and investment do not mix. I don't want to take money from the government. I don't think it's fair even on a social way. I think the government should take care of people, and entrepreneurs should take care of businesses. It's my only personal opinion. I think that I'm here because of somehow the Israeli government, or one of its arms, where they have a unit of, how do you call it, trade officers. So they came to the idea that, yes, we have embassies all over the world, and entrepreneurs want to make introductions and meetings. So they have people in those embassies, and you pay 1,000 shekels a year, which is equivalent to 200 euros a year, which is really we can afford it. And you get access to all of the embassies all over the world, and I think it's super. So this is something that is very easy for them to do, and it's not funding us. I don't think that we are even though that once we are successful, we bring all the economy, of course, but I think the government should put more research into other sectors, and we should take care of our own. That's personal opinion.
Yeah, maybe you want to come down there as well?
I agree with Yarif. Governments, I don't think it helps. Even all this Yozma initiative, I think again it's all go back to culture. If you go to Israel and you say that you want to invest $10 million and ask the company move to Hamburg, all of them will move. Overnight they'll come to Hamburg. So I don't think it will happen the same thing here. If you come to a small company and tell them I want you to move to some other places. So that's what really the Israelis are willing to do in order to build their own companies. So it's extremely far from what others are willing to do. If it will happen here, when the people will have the culture to really take the risks, that will push investors, that will create more money to come, because people have money. It's clear here too and everywhere. And they want to invest, and no one would like to get 1% interest or other. So they want to invest, and they're looking for opportunities, and people, I think, are willing to take risks. So, but once they'll see that there are, a bunch of people getting together and willing to do everything for their idea, then I think it makes sense for money to come into this, those companies. It doesn't have to come really from the government. It's, so it's like the equity will be created by itself.
Yeah.
It's not
So it actually does not come in Israel, right? You don't have that the public sector is heavily involved in that area.
No, they are. There are
programs.
Help.
Yeah.
There is chief scientists that help a lot of money, and I mean, I've never got a penny from the chief scientists. This is my third company I'm building. And I raised funds from everywhere in the world. I mean, I traveled to, I raised funds from Japan, I raised funds from France, from UK. I go everywhere to build my dream. Yes. So I don't stop. You look at Israeli VC. If Israeli VC doesn't want to give me money, I'll go everywhere. I'll try to create a relationship. In the past, I had a good relationship with Deutsche Telekom. It was extremely tough for me to do it. But eventually, then we got money from their division in Spain. So you have to really not rest until you make it done, and sacrifice a lot along the way, because things don't work as you plan, as obviously so. Okay. So, and I don't rely on the government, not in Israel too, although I think they are doing a good job, but I think it's a wrong approach to rely on them to help you. Just rely on private money. I think it's the best way.
I think there are different ideas, of course, where the government spends money. It can be, they can fund network events. I think at least from my perspective as well, I see the governments in any city being involved stronger in Germany, doing conferences, doing network events where actually it is the city or is the mayor or is some initiatives being hosting and inviting those people. Nico, we talked about business plan competitions and stuff like that are publicly funded. Do you think that this is something that should be done? Is this something that makes sense from your perspective?
I'm on a jury of one of those in North Rhine-Westphalia, and I think it's more or less a symbolic gesture to do that, and probably takes the speed out of the startups because governments are just too slow to do those things. And I really think that whether it's the state government or the city government, they should really rely on infrastructure and help and support their do networking events and invite big conferences to town, that kind of stuff. I think that's much more helpful than trying to get rid of 10 million euros by spending it on startups. I think there are better ways.
Do you meet any of those like public players in that space?
Yeah, I mean there are a couple of. You mean sort of in the wider public money and startups? I mean, for example, what was very successful in Berlin, it was the Profit program of the EBB, where they co-invested. So the problem with most state money, it has an adverse selection problem. So best team, like corporate VCs. So best teams don't want to work with state money or with corporate VCs. So you get a B selection and it just goes wrong. And they strictly only co-invested, I think in most cases. And I think they'll make a nice profit, and they can go back to the taxpayer and be like, look, we want more. Maybe just switching topic, one thing that I would be interested in to see how it is in Israel, one of the biggest stumbling blocks to changing general culture of business and entrepreneurship in Germany is, in my opinion, the worst business media or understanding of business and media in the world, possibly. I can't judge for the whole world, but when I read, even big newspapers, even business newspapers, write articles on any topic of business, but especially on startups and technology, I cringe, because it just shows it's so, like, my feeling is that German journalists are they study journalism and language, and I'm very not as interested in understanding, verticals. Whereas if you look at, let's say, media in the UK and in the US, they're really experts in their field, they get it, the readers get it, and I feel that whenever the German media reports about startups, it's about becoming rich quick, it's about losing money in most cases, because also the collective history of entrepreneurship in Germany started in 1999. The first thing everybody experienced was a thermonuclear explosion. in the US, people have a 40-year history of entrepreneurship and like, oh, it's great, and sometimes things go wrong. So I would be interesting to see in Israel is the media and also the wider media supportive of technology companies and entrepreneurs.
That's interesting, yeah.
The media in Israel is actually excited to become a startup nation. So the media is pretty involved in everywhere. They encourage startup. I mean, if I want to write an article tomorrow, I can call to the top 5 newspaper in Israel, as I know the technical writers, and they'll write something about us. So it's you get exposure when you have ideas, and they like the spirit of the startups, and so that's why I think it's a big difference.
I would say not exact. First time we don't totally agree. So yeah, everyone is supportive in Israel, and when you raise funding, everyone writes about it, and when you make a success, everyone writes about it, and when it doesn't work, people are a bit understanding about it, as you say. It's not, it closed down, it happens, but no one cares. I think that none of us or none of the people that we know would go to the Israeli press to read anything about technology or whatever. One small comment is here in Germany, this event, it's all in German, which is a roadblock for anyone who is not in German, but if you want to study something or read something, you would go to the tech ranches and anything else specific, and it's a click away, and everyone would do it. So it's not really important what the leading Israeli 2 or 3, will write. Who cares, really? Your mother?
But it creates impacts on the investors. They like to read it.
Depends on the investor. I think an article on the TechCrunch would be 10 times better than a great one on the, right?
Yeah, but it's still, investors like, there are a lot of local investors. When they hear about it, it gives them confidence.
It's perfect. I have no objection to it.
And it's easy to get
it's
exposure.
Very easy. They want it. They call you, and it's very easy. But I think it's less.
For me, it's more about the wider spirit in the population, right? So what image do they have of entrepreneurship? And that's why I feel that media is a very negative.
But the reason for that is that high tech in Israel accounts for 15% of the GDP. So it's one of the major locomotives of the entire society. And a lot of the workforce is employed in the high tech. And if you compare it to Germany, it's the Mittelstand, it's the manufacturing. So you would see a lot in the Handelsblatt about what's going in the SMBs rather than what is going in the startups, because the startups in Germany at the moment are not as productive or contributing to the economy as the same as they are doing in Israel. Now in the US, I don't know if that's the same, but there is an understanding that those small companies can become Apple.
Right, but I mean, we have seen a lot of coverage. I mean, there's been like, especially lately, it's been an insane amount of writing about startups, startup culture, Berlin as a startup hub, but it's all on this very superficial level that basically doesn't help educating people around that model. I mean, I've literally, people come to me when you raise money and that news gets out, people come to me, it's like, oh, I hear you're rich now. I mean, what do you mean? Yeah, you got all these millions now. We've raised funding. Yes, well, is it like a loan? No. So wait, you don't have to give it back? That's crazy. Must be some kind of scheme. It's literally. I think if you went out in Germany, you asked people about that model. They know a little bit about private equity, which in Germany being called Heuschrecken. So I mean, as venture capital, as sort of a subclass of private equity, that doesn't really help. And people just don't know how that system works, and that it's a smart system for investors, that you didn't dupe someone into giving them your money. Like, wait, so you got them to give you all this money and don't make even any money? Good job, It's like, what the fuck are you talking about, And literally that is not there, and I don't understand how you can have all this coverage over the last half year or year without sort of one background article, maybe in whether it's Spiegel or whether it's they just want to write about Ashton Kutcher. They don't want to write about, in the Financial Times. It would be nice to have at least this little box that explains how venture capital works, or
Maybe you need a television show.
So in that,
you should do that.
So in that sense, it is really bad. I definitely agree. Yeah.
In Israel, actually, there was a television show, a reality show about small venture capital. There was a jury. And people could
approach. They tried that here. There was Dragon's Den in the UK. And then there was Shark Tank in the US, and they had a pilot here with just one show aired with Rainer Kallmund in the jury. So I mean, you know, of course that he wasn't. I guess he wasn't qualified.
I've never seen that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, they took it off the air really quickly.
You know, addressing cultural change framework. I wanted to invite one of the guests here in the audience, who's representing the business angels here in the region, Frank Jordan. I think Frank, you wanted to. Listening to all of this right now, is there anything from a business angel's perspective that you would like to tell us here in the audience that maybe we haven't discussed or maybe that you want to point out?
Yes. Regarding to the last point, I would say, of course, the government is slow regarding to funds, and entrepreneurs have to take their own risks to be motivated. Of course, but on the other hand, you may have to think on other entrepreneurs who need the money to settle up the business, regarding to legal costs, regarding to rents, to rent the office, and maybe in contrast to Israel, grants provided by the governments are popular in Germany, popular in Berlin. And we are concerned about that the grants provided by the government are reduced over the last years. So 2011, for example, it was $1.8 billion and euro, and this year it's almost 1 billion euro, and it will be in 2013. It will be 0.7, so it will be reduced. And the funny thing by this is that the money will go to, or will prefer to go to people who are not placeable in the first employment market. So I mean that makes no sense in our view. And the other point, a new point maybe, which is really actual, is regarding to taxation. I mean, I know tax issues are not really popular with startups and not really interesting. However, we have a tax issue which affects seed investments with business angels and investors. So because until now investments with a vehicle of a limited liability company, the profit, the regular yearly profits and the profits regarding an exit would be are deferred. So this money could be invested in new projects, could be invested in new startups, and now we have the issue that according to EU law, to a decision of the European Court, this deferral will only apply if the investment is more than 10% in this startup. So this is, in our view, this is really tragic for the startup scene, because seed investment or money from business angel, from investors in the seed investment time can easily travel to somewhere else, can easily travel to other countries, and the money can go in other investments, and this is of course will hinder startup investment in view of a business angel or in view of smaller investments. So and there we need to do something, and yeah. So
okay.
In Israel, for example, the trajectory goes the opposite way. Last year was passed a new law which is called the Business Angel Law, which allows business angels to invest up to 1 million euro per year and deduct it from their taxes.
Well, so that's innovative. That's something else. Okay. Thanks for this comment.
With a lot of limitations. Over 3 years, that has to be with research and development, different, I mean, you know, governments.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's money invested, so I mean, you know, that's the way it should be.
That's the most important part. But thank you, Frank Jordan, for this comment. We have only a few minutes left, so I thought we'd make a final round, and I want to close the final round with a question to the next big thing from both sides, from the startup side as well, and of course from the investor side. Like, what models are coming? If you want to, talk about it, maybe some of you even invest yourself. Where do you invest, and what do you see in the near future in media and IT? What models are coming up, and where do you see, the future market? And maybe we should start on this side. Conrad, do you see any models besides television, music television, that are coming?
Okay, yeah. The big data themes is coming, and I think security in the net, security with our data, is a big field when we give all our life into the net, the big data, then I need a security, and that's why when I not make TV, I make security company. I think it's big.
Okay, thank you. Sharif?
Don't know how to answer it smartly. I think that the best trends that we are seeing right now, it's really all over the place. I can share with you one thing that raised last night in a dinner and sticks with me. If you cannot sell it online, don't sell it at all, and I think it's true. I don't know if it's answer your question, but that's the way I see it.
Okay, very good. Moshe, you have an idea as well?
Mobile content will become really big, especially content discovery in mobile. You have the smart devices, but I think mobile is just started. All the people think, it's like over. The same as people think the internet is over, and I think it's just started. So that's why I believe mobile will really impact.
Beyond the mobile content, of course. Yeah. Do you see any other developments?
Of course, there are many, but I just think mobile overall is a platform, is a vehicle to reach users, business, so forth. It's going to be big.
Okay. Felix? If you would invest then? If you would invest tomorrow then?
I think what's fascinating me is that we are starting to apply the things that we learn in the participatory internet, Web 2.0, whatever you want to call it, to the real world, to making our life more flexible, basically. I think we'll see an interesting wave of decluttering and basically allowing that for new forms of living to evolve. So, we see mobility schemes instead of privately owned cars. I think, we won't own cars probably in 10 years anymore. It's not even cool anymore with young people to talk about your car. Like, yeah, who cares? It's with things like Airbnb. I mean, basically yield management, basically applying techniques we know from online to sort of yield management in the real world, to be able to enable different lifestyles where you can basically just choose to live out of one city 1 month and live out of another city the next month, and basically you don't need to own stuff anymore. Like MP3 music went from owning a physical thing to an MP3, and now it even feels old school to hoard your films and your music on a hard disk, right? Because it's available, it's in the cloud. You can just, if you want to listen to it, it's available. And I think we'll see that apply to a lot of other things, schemes like Uber, TaskRabbit, ride sharing, all these things. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things that are to be done there, where we take the technology we've created and apply it to the physical world.
Okay, exciting. Curtis, you agree? Or you see things differently?
No,
you don't have to, talk about your secret portfolio strategies, but maybe you give us a little bit of insight.
One thing that I find really interesting and that I think is going to go places is mobile payments, and for two reasons. Number one is obviously the convenience of just being able to not lug around a huge wallet with you everywhere. And the second is more towards learning more about user behavior, which a lot of the big companies are starting to do, not just through social graphs, but all through offline methods. Google Wallet, for example, now takes a loss on every single transaction that you book through their service, just because they want to build up behavioral and pattern recognitions based on that. How successful that'll be implemented in Germany, I'm not so sure. I have my doubts on that. Germany, after all, is the only place in the world where I have to show my passport when I buy a $5 cup of coffee with my credit card.
It can happen, I heard, yeah. Okay.
So,
okay. Ciaran?
I agree with all that's been said, especially sort of the refocusing of a lot of social services. So the internet has gotten very loud, very noisy, and people, especially on mobile phone, they need a different user experience, more focused, more sharp, targeted to more one use case. So we're seeing services like Facebook being torn apart into like 20 different applications, which is Facebook is doing it on its own. Then also, it's also been hinted at software and myself communicating with hardware better, and hardware is really anything, and that also happening in the enterprise. Most SMEs, despite maybe having a Yammer account or something, are still pretty ancient places, and a lot of it's going to be huge opportunities for entrepreneurs to think about more about SMEs and how they can disrupt the enterprise. And then there's a huge, big agricultural crisis we're heading towards, where I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for software engineers to really think about how can we, with software, make sort of things more efficient. And so energy is through, there's millions of people working on it, but with food and those kind of things. But as a venture capitalist, I always try and say, let's not think about the next big thing, because we're going to be definitely wrong.
Okay, a year.
Building up on what Yariv said, I think that any company that would find a way to switch stuff from offline to online is going to be a big company. We've just recently invested in a company that is called Dreamlines and disrupts the cruise market. Unlike hotels, cars, flights that are more than 85% of them are booked today online, cruises are 10% only. So anything that goes from offline to online is going to be big.
Okay, Nico, last but not least.
Well, all of the above, but I think the most interesting part will really be the intersection of big data, mobile, and the whole consumerization of IT. That, you know, how we work privately on our iPhones and tablets and whatnot. This will move into the enterprise and change the way we work in the enterprise, and will create demand in the enterprise that, you know, people don't want to click on the button 25,000 times in a minute in order to change something en masse. They want to swipe and do stuff and move it from here to there. So I think enterprise will be really fun to watch in the next couple of years.
Okay, so thank you very much for your participation. I think we had a great discussion. We talked about culture changes, you know, changes and the way we fund. We talked about talent search. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and thank you for your participation. We have a short break right now, and then we will listen to the international keynote in 15 minutes. It's 12:15. So I hope that you guys stay a little bit longer, so maybe in the break we can get in touch with the audience and, you know, clear some questions. But thanks for participating, being here, and see you again in 15 minutes. Thank you.
We are not selling our product to the end user. We will sell only to partners. And the way we will sell the partners, there were others. There were Chinese companies selling to our partners, is to do for them the whole marketing, the design, the surveys, the roadmap. We actually worked for each one of the partners as the marketing arm, and it did very well for them, very well for us. Clearly, many patents. If you are innovative, if you create innovation, you have to patent it. Any innovation with no patent is just like throwing all your money from your window. Patent, everything you can do. And the question is how to use the patents, and there are many ways to use patents. And clearly, the most obvious way to use patent is to sue the other guys who are infringing on the patents. Well, if you are not a company from Silicon Valley, your chances to succeed are not very high. Actually, what is guaranteed is that you are going to spend a lot of money, a lot of time going to court. You go to court, you never know how will go out of the court because you may win, you may lose. And if you look at the latest situation between Apple and Samsung, well, Samsung is winning in Korea and Germany. Apple is winning in the States, yes. Can anybody predict? Yes, Apple could predict that the trial was in California or in the States. So practically, suing is the obvious way. It could be very, very successful. It could be amazing disaster. We chose another way. We were relatively small companies. The companies that were manufacturing the flash memory, which is used in the USB flash drives, are companies like Toshiba, Samsung, Renesas, Pension, Hynix. We went to them and said, guys, we have patents. You have flash. Let's exchange. We'll give you the rights to use our patents. You'll give us specific, very, very low price for the flash memory. Actually, give us the cost of the flash, the cost to manufacture, plus some extra. So actually, and they did it. They did it because it was good for them, good for us. Clearly, we had to be very convincing. I couldn't come with a statement that we're not going to sue them, but you don't just go and say, I'm going to sue you. You have to do it at the right time, at the right way. And we reached actually agreements with everybody in this market. And by doing that, we got the material at the right times, at the right prices, and at the right quantities in order to allow us to grow nicely. And this was actually our growth. We sold in 2001, we sold $45 million. In 2006, we were supposed to reach revenues of over $1 billion. This is a very, very fast growth, especially for a hardware company. And it's based on all these sorts of thinking, innovation thinking. So that's a good one. The company was sold to SanDisk actually in November 2006 for $1.6 billion. It's a nice amount. Today, looking backward, people say, wow, you sold it too cheap. SanDisk actually, which was the largest company, if you look at their business today, most of the business are the M Systems business, and the historically business now are the minority of the business of the company, and the technology which they are using is our unique technology that we developed prior to being acquired. Now comes the bad part, and there is a bad part. And by the way, if my story would be only success story one after the other, if anybody comes to you with a success story one after the other, you may believe him, you may not. So I had the bad one, and the bad one was the module story. Module was a concept of modular phone. There was a whole idea of ecosystem, a very small, tiny phone surrounded by peripherals, which is a camera or this was a QWERTY, a keyboard, and then connection to the TV set and to the tablet or whatever it was. And we really came with something which was very unique, very different, very innovative. The device by itself, small, friendly, full functionality, modular. However, it's not enough to be innovative. You have to execute. There is a statement from Andy Grove, which I like very much. Andy Grove said once that your strategy and innovation are as good as your execution. If you have great idea, but you execute it badly, it's actually similar to having a bad idea and execute it badly. So execution is crucial, and we didn't execute. We made many mistakes. Many mistakes which I can go through, but the time I think is short. So if you want to ask me about later about the mistakes, and I'll try to give you something from the insights there. Finally, company terminated its activity. The company was actually finishing its life by selling the patents to Google. Google were nice enough to buy it from us for a nice amount of money. Good for Google, good for us. And then comes the ones which I just initiated. So they may be one day the portion of the good or the bad. If you ask me, I've no doubt in each one of my initiatives that it's going to be great success. Each one of them. If you ask others, some agree, some disagree. That's part of life. And what happened to me actually after terminating, after finishing my story with Modu, is that I allowed myself to spread to many companies, actually enabling or activating in a mode that the innovation is not focused on a specific company or product. And I do have many people that I got to know through all the time, so I can establish companies, put the right person to run it, monitor the activity. So I'm involved now in many companies, and I'll talk shortly about them. The first one is Comigo. Comigo is a smart TV platform. We believe that the TV is going to be very, very different. The way of watching TV is going to change significantly. You're going to have in several years, couple of years, 5 years, 7 years, a TV which the experience is in a way that it's interactive. You can, while you are watching a football game, you can choose to see the statistics. You can choose another commentator. You can do betting with your friends, friendly betting, of course. We're not talking about anything which is illegal. You can get statistics about the players. You can go back to the minute of the goal and look at the goal. That's the way that things are going to look. A lot of relations with your friends. You want to see what your friends are seeing, if they want to be seen, of course. You want to interact with them. You want to buy merchandise, maybe send them merchandise that you bought. So we believe that a lot is going to happen around the TV. A lot is going to happen because the technology now enables it. We have now fast internet. And IPTV or OTT, over the top, are terms which are long ago, 15 years, the industry is talking about IPTV. Didn't happen. Didn't happen because you cannot send content. You cannot do that while the internet is too slow. And it's getting there while we are reaching bandwidths that enable 20 megabits per second, 100 megabits per second, and that's what's required. So you get to see a lot of things there that relate to the friends, the statistics, all kinds of interactions, voting, whatever it is. Then another small startup that I established is something that is called Shirut.net. It's a service.net. And the idea is that everybody, at least in Israel, but I think that it's not in Israel, is suffer from service. You make a call, they never tell you what exactly is what you means they record your call. They don't let you hear the recording except if you take them to court, and you don't take them to court, of course. And there is a summary which is not accepted by them, and there are promises that are not that are guaranteed, but guaranteed in parentheses. So we just made a place that all the services are in one place, and you can call and record and listen and actually tell your friends what are your agreements and get to see what is their agreement and get statistics. And if you spoke with someone and he was impolite, report about it and all the things that involved in getting a good service. We did it initially without a business model because people are not going to buy service. People treat service as something which is free, automatically. It's there. They are supposed to get service for free. After doing that, what we found that the ones who are ready to pay for it are the service providers, because by doing that, we can provide them a lot of information. We actually can make the life for them much better, because now we can actually provide forms. And then if you want to call your phone company to complain, before you call in our system, there is a form. We'll allow the user to actually fill a form. And he can fill the form, which sometimes is easier for him, so he can send the form. It's easier for the phone company. Instead of getting a call and having somebody talking for 15 minutes with the one who wants to complain, they can get it in a better way. You want to move to another apartment. You don't have to call. You can just fill the right form, and then the correspondence with you would be much easier, much better. So actually, we came with an idea that came for a specific direction and took it to the business model to totally different direction, which I hope will be very successful. And then that's something which I announced actually last Wednesday, which I'm very, very proud for it, and I'm still excited. And whenever you announce anything, whenever you establish a company and you reach to a product, it's like walking on clouds. I'm sure that my blood pressure went up, and it's still up, probably 200 by 120 for a whole week. So this was Wednesday, and today is Tuesday, so it's not a free, it's exactly the week. I'm still very, very excited. What's that? What we did is we announced this very unique keyboard. It's a keyboard with a display as part of the keyboard, which enables you to look at the keyboard while you type and see what you are typing without the need to move your eyes from the keyboard to the display. Now, if you are reporters, you will tell me, but we don't look at the keyboard. We look at always at the display. We just type like that. So guys, if you type like that, if you do blind typing, you are the very small minority, because most of the world, and the numbers are between 80 to 90%, are looking at the keyboard when they are typing. And then they look at the display, say, oops, I typed in English instead of Hebrew, or I made a mistake, I have to do backspace, get back, whatever. We enable seeing what you type. And then, once we have a display, actually, this could serve as a secondary display to the computer, to the regular display. So we enable, by clicking a button, to move to a mode which allows you to see widgets on the secondary display. And these are widgets of the date, the time, the weather, the last email you got, the picture you chose. There are many ideas here for new widgets that can be made, like the shares, the stocks that you are owning, Facebook, Twitter. Now think about watching a movie. Many people are watching now movies on their PC. You watch the movie, but you still can have at the keyboard the secondary display with the latest Facebook notes or Twitter notes that you are getting. It's a new area, it's a new dimension to the PC, which we are very happy to bring. So that's on my activity, and maybe a little bit about myself and how did I reach those success or not success stories. So first, there is a question that Steve Jobs was asked, how do you systemize innovation at Apple? His answer was, we don't. We hire good people. If you want to create a company, if you want to have a company with innovation, find the right people to make innovation. I'll use a statement from Victor Hugo. He said a very imaginary, this is about 200 years ago. He said, there is nothing like a dream to create the future, and I will get to dreams later on. That's a great statement from Victor Hugo, and I admit I'm a dreamer. Some people are catching me dreaming in meetings. No, that's part of life. My statement is always, I'm not perfect. And then by dreaming, by the imagination, I created the M systems and the USB flash drive story clearly with help from your friends. You can't succeed without friends. By the way, part of innovation is you need to have the people around you to play the ping pong of raising the idea and hear them, and they tell you it's terrible, and they say no, it's not. They take a look if you do that, and they tell you no, it's interesting, and then sometimes they convince you that yes, it's nonsense. Forget about it. Somebody did it 10 years ago, and sometimes the ping pong, this conversation leads to really taking the original idea and making it something which is larger. Module, clearly, I had the big phones of 2004-5, if you remember the HTC first phones, in my pocket. They were very inconvenient. I said, I want large screen, but I want modularity. By the way, I do believe that the concept of modularity is still right. I'm carrying iPad with me. I would love to have my phone stuck into the iPad, small one that I can take out, and if I go to the beach, just take the phone, not the tablet. But it's part of life. And if we talk about typing, I am a terrible typist. I'm 57 years old. People at my age look at the keyboard. I find that people at the age of 17, my young children, they still look at the keyboard. And clearly, the switching from Hebrew to English, and maybe that's the same with moving from Germany to English, is a pain because I type, and then I look, and then I correct, and it's very, very, very embarrassing, very inconvenient. This was clearly not typed at Smart. If I would type it at Smart Type, I would eliminate all these mistakes. To summarize what I can say about innovation, so first, it is very simple to innovate. It's not being smart. I began with the statement, and I stand behind the statement. I'm not the smart guy. Look around you. Look at your needs. Imagine the solution. You have to imagine the solution and understand that solution can be done. No fear. And being very determined to really take the solution and do it despite all the hurdles, all the problems, all these uncertainties that are going to be there. A few comments from a smart person. This is Chris Hitterly from Walt Disney. He was the CTO. He said something which is quite obvious. He said, innovation is about solving problems for people. Everybody knows it. But then he says something very, very smart. Look there. He said, solving problems, even if they might not know yet that they have a problem. If you try to find an idea by making surveys, you will fail. If you try to be creative by asking people, different countries, what they need, you will not get the right answer. If you ask your partners what they need, they may tell you modifications in what they have. They will never tell you something which is out of the box. Think yourself what you need, think what your customers need before they come and raise the need. Something else he said, people get caught up in trying to have innovative processes. I saw in companies the innovation committee. The word innovation doesn't come together with the word committee. If it's a committee, there won't be innovation. There is a great answer from, again, Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, to a question he was asked. He was asked, how do they come with all the ideas to products? His answer, which is a very smart one, was, we make products that we would love to use. Then we find others to buy it. And then last one from Chris Hitterly, and that's for the CEOs that are sitting in the audience, or the ones who intend to become CEOs. You have to have leaders who believe and have guts, support innovative, extremely tolerant of good people and failures. Being innovative, being creative means failing. Failing, creating a success. If you don't allow the failing, you won't create a success. And then something is advice that is by somebody called Anonymous, which people claim that that's me, but the statement is, if you want your dreams to come true, if you spoke about dreams, don't sleep. Getting to success is a lot of work. It's not, hey, I have an idea. I'll make a keyboard with a display. The keyboard with the display was an effort of a lot of people, a lot of hurdles, a lot of until the last minute. People at the night before we launched the product stayed at the office until 3:30, yes? And they woke up at 6:30 because they went to make sure that the place where we're going to make the announcement is ready, and that's part of life in high tech. You work very hard for the success. Even if you have good ideas without a lot of work won't make it. And now for the last slide, which is why Israel. So first, we are the startup nation. There is a book called Startup Nation by two guys. Everybody probably heard about the book. I think that maybe 5% of the people who bought the book or got it really read it. But what the book did is a great thing for the country. It's brand. It created a brand. We are the startup nation. Reality, not about the book, I won't talk about it, is that Israel is a startup because Israel is relatively a new place. It's only 60-something years. It's not a lot. It's a nation which is just born. And it was born as a startup. It was born with an idea. It was born in the hard way, very similar to the way you establish and found startups. Maybe one of our problems is that we are still acting like a startup while we are 62, 64 years. But that's Israel. People that live in Israel, or most of them, almost all of them, were not born in Israel, or their parents were not born in Israel, or their parents' were not born in Israel. Everybody that moves from a country to country goes through the experience of being in the uncertainty, goes through the experience of the lack of confidence. You go to a foreign place. My parents came to Israel to a place where they saw that this is a desert, and they didn't talk the language. They actually had no relatives, and this was a very strange place for them, but they did it. And once you are born into such a situation, once you are born to parents that went through this situation, going to the unknown, going to startup is something which you accept. Then there are the subjective things. When you are in Israel, you go to the army. And now I would love to say you go to the army because what should be done is that everybody should go. Well, not everybody goes, unfortunately, but many are going. And then you can find yourself at the age of 19 leading a team, responsible for life of people, getting a lot of authority and responsibility. You can go and choose another path. I chose another path. I went to study before I went to the army, actually to the Navy. I found myself at the age of 23 running a very, very large project, getting the digital communication into the Israeli navies, into the Navy's ships, which was a breakthrough at that time, a lot of money, while I was a year after my studies. If I would born in another country and would go after my studies to work in a GE or Deutsche Telekom, I would be responsible at the age of 23 on the papers of the project that is sub-project, that is part of a system that is getting to be done in 5 years from now, and my job would be to copy the numbers from one page to another page. But I got this responsibility because that's the way our army is functioning and working. And then we are part of the Jewish nation. Jewish nation for many, many years, 2,000 years, was a minority wherever they were. Being minority means tradition and history of survival. And survival is an issue. Survival is an issue. They are the ones who are doing the things which are out of the box, and they survive. They are the ones who go with the stream, and they don't. So it's a matter of the natural choice process that brought us here. Is it good to be the startup nation? Everybody talks about it, how great it is. There are pros and cons. There are good things in being the startup nation. I'm very proud of it, of course, but there are some cons as well. Clearly, the right thing is become mature, become stable, peaceful. I hope that we'll get into a peaceful situation in our area. but at the same time keep the startup characteristics or DNA. And if you look at great companies in the world, look at Apple, look at Google, look at other successful companies, they are big, but they still kept the startup concepts. That's it. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dov. We're supposed to have a little Q&A session now, but I think we should include the audience as well. We have a microphone here for the audience, so if you are, yes, we have it there. So if you have a question, please just give us a sign. But I would like to, address the first question to you. You talked a lot about the mindset as well, and about, the culture that you want to establish. We had a discussion, just half an hour ago, and we were talking about the culture of failure as well, and also the entrepreneurial culture that is lacking here in Germany. Do you think there's any recipe how you can, work on changing this? It might be a long process, but what do you think? What a large nation like Germany can do to change the image of an entrepreneur and create a better entrepreneurial culture? Because many on the podium said that we're not very good at that. The entrepreneur itself is not seen as something to pursue, in your life. Do you have any idea what we can do? What
Absolutely.
We can learn?
First, it's I'm honored to be asked this question, and I'm not imagining even being consulting the German nation,
No,
which is
absolutely.
a great nation by itself. But practically, I do believe that failures are part of the process. You should accept failures. Now, how can you, as a nation, accept failures? It's a matter of publicity. It's a matter of press. What do you write about press, about failures? Mm-hmm. Is it disaster, or is it a good trial? Mm-hmm. In Israel, we do have something called the chief scientist that is funding companies. It's not great funding. He doesn't have money. Every year, the budget is slower and lower there. But he funds companies, startups. And when a startup fails, the concept is that he's not punished. He's not the chief scientist is not coming, or his people coming to this company and say, how could you take our money and not succeed?
And lose it.
And lose it, yeah. And you promised us, and we're writing great business plans about how amazing is going your company. No. Actually, what they tell you, you failed, okay, let's understand why. And you know what? Let's go and do the other one. And you fail, you establish a second company, you go back to them, they'll never tell you you failed at the first company, we won't give you money for the second. If you did your job, if you tried well, if you were fighting and didn't succeed, they'll accept you for the second time and even the third time.
And the chief scientist he is a public figure, is an institution?
Yeah, chief scientist is part of the Israeli Misrad HaTamat. Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever she said.
Yeah.
He's part of the government, yes. And it's, by the way, it's a very important role in Israel. And he has budget to support startups. So that's something else. You need to have some budget to support it.
Okay. And the media, because the media was addressed as well in our discussion, and there was one venture capitalist, and he said that he has not seen such a bad business press writing about technology, startups, like in Germany. He said any other country is much better. He was complaining that there is a lack of understanding, but it would have been, it's a very superficial way to write about it, and it's mainly seen as, some people try to get quick money, but it's not about really the real impact that that can be created with a startup scene. So I don't know, how do you see the media landscape in Israel? Are they going with that, supporting it?
Well, yes and no. I think that the media in Israel was doing very well by praising a startup that were sold to large companies. And actually, there were, for a long time, every small company that were sold for $10 million would get headers. Company XYZ was sold to Microsoft for $10 million. Wow. It's good and it's bad. The bad is that actually it encouraged companies or CEOs or founders to be sold because you're selling, you are a hero, yes? Which is a mistake. And I think that they do understand it now. It encouraged too much the process of selling, not the process of building large companies. But practically the press is important. The press is important because people read, it changed their mind. It's make them take the risk or not take the risk.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Please give me a sign if you have any question. Is there any question? Maybe here.
Yeah, actually also being on the learning curve, you said you would tell us a bit more on the failures in executing the modular telephone, because I too also believe it's a great idea and it's the predecessor of what we are all using now. So what was the problem?
Okay. Touching a point here. We're touching a point here. Yeah, let's go for that. That's good.
Okay. Well, I live it. Yes, it's it will probably go with me forever. When you establish a phone company, it is a very, very, very expensive process. When you design a phone has everything. It has mechanics and electronics and software and real time and radio and video and UI, UX, whatever you can dream, it's there. And therefore, it costs a lot of money. You cannot establish a phone company and decide that you want to do that for $10 million or $20 million. If you really want to design a phone, not to copy something or not to go to Chinese phone manufacturer and tell them, make for me a phone, you have to really establish the knowledge, have the right people. And what happened to me is that after M Systems, it was very easy for me to raise money. It was so easy. Actually, I raised the money for a module with a presentation of 11 slides, where 5 of them were pictures. And there was no business plan, just people said, we want to give you the money. And I took $20 million, which sounds a lot, but it was not a lot. And I took it from the wrong guys, because I had to do the job of writing a business plan, go to the large private equities, talk about the need to raise a lot of money. I have a funny story, but can I tell a story?
Of course.
Funny story about it.
We love stories.
Okay, I raised $20 million, and then my friend from the CEO of Tennis, Eli Harari, great guy, came to visit me at Modu, and he actually liked the story so much. It seems like he wanted to move to my company instead of staying at SanDisk. And then he asked me, how much money do you think you will need until you'll be break even? And the truth, until he asked the question, this was 2 months after establishing the company, I didn't think about it. I just wanted money. People gave me money. So I scratched my head and I said, I think that I should need something like $80 million. So he is bold. He said he made like that, and he said, let me think. I think you need to double, 160. Okay. He walked away. When the company finished its activity, we raised a lot of money. We raised it the wrong way. We raised it after sticking to the Model 1, which was a bad product, not the right one. We raised already $120 million, and we were very close to getting there. We really need, I believe, something like $20 million, and 40 would be the right number. So we lacked he was right, $160 million. That's the number I would have to really go with. So I met him, after I terminated the company, and told him, Eli, I must ask you, when you met me, at the beginning of the company, and you told me that I need $160 million, how did you know the number? He said, Dov, I'm telling you the truth. Whatever number you would say, I would scratch my head and would tell you double.
That's great. I love that.
Okay.
So you always call him now?
You
always call your friend now to come when you present a new idea? For the sketching?
Clearly, I like people that sketch,
so stretch
the head.
Okay.
Sketch the heads, yes.
Okay, that's very cool.
Sure.
That's very cool. Any other question here in the audience? Then I have a question. What I liked was your clear take on creation, and that creation and ideas do not go with surveys. That there is that it doesn't go together. You can ask people if they like an idea that they've never heard before, and they probably would vote that they don't like it because they don't understand it. I work in communications, and in the industry, in advertising and in communication, there's always that discussion as well that, companies try to create a campaign and then they say we have to test it first, because that maybe is too strong or is like really crazy idea, and then they test it and then it comes back and then they say, well, the test failed, so people don't really like it, so we have to completely change it. So do you think there is a learning from that as well for another industry, that you should also follow your guts, or is it or be more courageous to try out things? And
we'll have time for another story.
We have time for another story, right? This is the boss.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah? A few minutes. Okay.
First, you have to follow your guts. But if you only follow your guts, you will make many more mistakes. You have to follow your guts, your friends' guts, and by talking with your friends, then enable yourself to have a guts. If you just have your guts because that's what you think, that's wrong. But a story about surveys. USB flash drive was quite successful at some time when we reached revenue of several hundreds of millions of dollars selling the product. I bought a lady. I made organization change, moved the guys from this division to do something else. I brought a lady to run the business, and she came originally from McKinsey. And she came to me after a week and said, I'm shocked. Guys, you've never did any surveys. I said, that's right. I said, you have to have surveys. Anybody that is serious in the business is making surveys. At that time, we had an idea to make a very small USB flash drive in the shape of a floppy with very low capacity, and we packaged 5 together so you could buy them, like you would buy floppies on the past. This was the time that floppies were gone. So the idea was a floppy replacement. And she said, it's a great idea, I love it, but let's take a good company. I know one. It's not very cheap, very expensive. It will cost you only $130,000 to do a real survey before we go to the market. I said, you're the expert. I'm the guy I'm only the inventor. Go ahead. She did a survey. They came back after a couple of months. They did it actually test all over the world in Tokyo, New York, San Francisco, Berlin, and they said, the results are unbelievable. Actually, we must show you some takes from movies we took, because we interviewed people and we just took, the process. Yes?
Yes.
I said, great. And I still remember one of the movies, New York, big fat lady, and she gets this floppy replacement, and she says, it's great, it's unbelievable, I love it, I'll buy it, I'll take one for myself, the red will be for myself, there were different colors, the black will be for my husband, the blue and the pink will go to my daughters, and the green to my son. It's perfect, it's a great product. So that was the conclusion, it's a great product. Now this was 2005. We were selling at this time at about 1 to 2. We finished with 5 million units a month of production. But this was about 1 to 2 million units of production a month. We launched the product. We sold from this product all over during several months, about 5,000 units.
Wow. So
surveys are great, but are very, very dangerous. You have to look at it, at the specific subject and be very, very careful on the way it's done.
Right. Thank you for the story. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's a great story to end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dov.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll have a break now. I think there's a 1 hour break, and then we'll be back for the rest of the program. Thank you so much.
Beginnen wahrscheinlich.